Yo, what is up guys? It's Pedro here, and in today's video I'll be talking about Antonio Gibson and how the Washington Commanders so far in the spring have been using him totally different than they have been using him in the past. So if you guys are new, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button and that notification bell as well, and make sure to check out Man to Sleep, link in the description. You use code HTTC for 10% off. So Antonio Gibson is entering his fourth season with the Washington Commanders, and so far it's been a little bit of an up and down career for Antonio Gibson in Washington. And he's been, I would say, a little bit underwhelming in terms of his pass catching production, and that's not all on him, and honestly probably mostly on Scott Turner and how he was using Antonio Gibson in his first few years, because in college he was a wide receiver mostly. He played a little bit of running back, but he was mostly a wide receiver. He was, lining up in the slot and, making a bunch of explosive plays. And in Washington, can't remember many times where he did line up in the slot. Mostly was just running the football, and when he did get targets, most of them were just normal screen plays or just stuff behind the line of scrimmage, when he could be doing so much more than that, because not only is he a good route runner, but in space he can make guys miss. And I think he is explosive, and honestly I think he has the potential to be a better pass catching running back and more of a pass catcher than a runner. So I think Brian Robinson is probably a better natural runner than Antonio Gibson is, but I think Antonio Gibson is a much better pass catcher, and I think that's the way they should use him. And so far in training camp, or not training camp, in mini camp and OTAs, we've heard some good things in terms of that. But just real quick, looking at some stats from Gibson, in 2020, probably his best year. His best year for sure. 14 games, had 170 carries for 800 yards, 4.7 yards per carry, and 11 touchdowns. I mean, the efficiency was there, was getting in the end zone, no fumbles at all. And receiving wise, that was, probably his worst year, but around the same as 2021 because he played fewer games, but had 250 yards. And then 2021 had over 1,000 yards. Efficiency went down and had 5 fumbles, and then also had 300 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns. And this past year had 546 rushing yards. Efficiency was really bad, 3.7, and 3 touchdowns. Only had 1 fumble, and then had 350 receiving yards with 2 touchdowns. So receiving numbers went up, but still not to the spot you would like it to be, considering the type of player he is. Like, ideally, you want, like this year, I think the rushing numbers for Gibson, I think the attempts will be down, but let's say he goes to, 130 attempts for, like 550 yards. Like, keep it around the same yards, lower the carries and make it, hopefully he's a little bit more efficient, a little healthier, and also the line's going to be probably a little bit better. So that's probably what you want from Gibson this year, a little bit more efficient, going to get fewer carries because, Brian Robinson's going to be that main guy, or at least that's what we think. And then receiving wise, I want that 350 to be 500 at least, to be at least 500 and get that 2 touchdown number up to like 4 or 5 touchdowns, because Eric Bieniemy has a good history of getting his guys involved in, receiving the football. And a couple nuggets real quick, I just tweeted this out just to get a visual for you guys, but a couple weeks ago I was listening to the Beltway Football Podcast with JP, Mitch, and Pete, and JP was talking about how, the Commanders were using Gibson as more of a receiver and lining him up on the line of scrimmage at times during OTAs and minicamp. And for me, that is amazing news, because we weren't really seeing that in camp before and in the offseason before, or in the season at all with Scott Turner. And to already, see that for Gibson is huge, and to see that they're kind of agreeing with the fans. Like, we got to use him more as a receiver, or not even just as a receiver, but like he's got to line up on the line of scrimmage, or at least run routes out of the backfield instead of just, okay, we'll just dump it off to you as a last resort and you can get 4 or 5 yards on the screen. Like, that's not, that's okay, but you need more of that from Gibson. and or more like you need something different than that in terms of receiving the football. And Scott Turner actually did it at times last year in the Jaguars game. He had a route, I can't remember exactly what it was, but what I do remember was a nice route, and he was close to getting a touchdown, but on the right side of the field he got out at like the 3-yard line or something. That was nice. And then either in the Packers or Colts game he ran a nice route, I think it was either out of the backfield or in the slot, and scored a touchdown. And I was like, okay, it works, do it more. And Scott Turner just did not do it. That was one of my biggest issues with Scott Turner. Ron Rivera said Antonio Gibson could be a matchup nightmare for the opponent in the team's new offense. So again, alluding to a little bit of a different use of Gibson this year, which I am for sure excited for. And having Gibson, Robinson as I do, and yeah, I still want Gibson to get some carries for sure, but his primary use for us hopefully will be as a pass catcher. Another thing, this is what Gibson says. Eric wants to make sure Antonio gets as many opportunities right now to show us what he's capable of, Rivera continued, because I think that'll be a big part of the game planning. So another kind of quote from Rivera. Let's see. This is kind of the stat I've showed you guys earlier in the offseason. Jared McKinnon had 9 receiving touchdowns this past year. That's as many as Kadarius Toney, Justin Watson, MVS, and Juju had combined, their whole receiving core basically. And that's more than Justin Jefferson, 2 more than Tyreek, and 3 more than DK had all last season. Doesn't mean he's better than those guys, but that kind of shows how good McKinnon is, but also how good Eric Bieniemy, and also how good, what's his name? Andy Reid, they are at scheming these guys up, and especially scheming these running backs open and getting them touchdowns. He got them 9, and I'm not saying Gibson's going to get 9, but it shows that he is able to get these running backs open and get them touches. And I think Gibson's arguably more talented than McKinnon. McKinnon might be a little bit quicker, but I think Gibson's got a little bit more strength and, might be able to, get a little bit more yards after catch. And again, was a receiver in college. So I think that could work. Real quick word from our sponsor. And huge shout out to Manta Sleep for sponsoring this video. They make the best sleep masks in the world. They have a bunch of different types that can change temperatures, that can change the sound that you're listening to when you're going to bed and when you're waking up. I've been using it for the last month or so, and it's done wonders for my sleep. My sleep has improved drastically. I've been getting good quality sleep whenever I'm having a tough time sleeping. I just put the mask on and go to bed, and it's great. So check them out. Use code HTTC for 10% off. Okay, and we're back. And of course, I would like for Gibson to get more touchdowns, and I think he will. But more importantly, I think the yards, we need to get that up. And we look at these right here, 353 yards, averaging 7 yards a catch, or 7.7. You'd like to see this go up to let's say 9 yards a catch, maybe even more. Just get a little bit more of those explosive plays up, a little bit more of those 20-plus yard plays, because Jerick McKinnon definitely had more of those. And let's turn that 46 into, let's say, 60 maybe, and turn that to maybe 9 yards a catch. And that puts you at 540 yards, and that's much more respectable and just a lot better than the 350. And then you can turn that 2 into let's say 5, and that's a really solid season. Over 500 yards receiving, over 5+ receiving touchdowns, and then you add in 500 yards rushing and maybe 5 rushing touchdowns, and that's over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns combined. That is what I want to see from Gibson this season. I really, really want to see that. Maybe you can have him as a returner, and that's fine, but I think that will be a good use of Gibson this year, and I think Eric Bieniemy will be able to use him that way because of the way he's used guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the receiving game, and Jerick McKinnon, and other guys. Well, even Pacheco sometimes is able to get some decent yards in the run game. So I want you guys to comment down below what you want to see from Gibson this season. So far, I'm very encouraged in terms of what we've heard coming out of minicamp and OTAs about how they've been using him. They've been using him more as a receiver because they know Robinson's going to be that main back, and this article right here says, or like this tweet says, J.D. McKissic is gone. So the primary receiving back, like Gibson was getting these numbers right here. Where is it? Let's go down. He got 300 receiving yards with McKissic in, playing a lot of those games. I think he got hurt, but let's say even in his rookie year, 250 yards in 14 games. That's basically on pace for 300-ish yards over 17 games, and that's with McKissic playing all those games. So now you take out McKissic, and let's just say it was Scott Turner as the OC. You're probably looking at like 400 receiving yards for him, maybe even more. Now you bring in Eric Bieniemy, and I think he's going to try to get Gibson more touches in the receiving game. I think you're looking at 500 plus yards receiving easily if he stays healthy. Could go up to 600. I think that's how good Gibson could be in the receiving game, and I think that's how good Eric Bieniemy could be. And I might be getting too ahead of myself, but maybe we could eventually really start to mold and develop Gibson into more of a receiver than a running back, or more of a hybrid than he's been in the first few years, kind of like what he was at Memphis. A lot of people are saying, oh, Deebo Samuel, he's kind of like Deebo. Well, he's not been anything like Deebo, or in terms of the way they've been using him. So if they start to use him like that, I think he could get you eventually 500, 600, 700 plus receiving yards. But we're a long way away from that 700 mark. Maybe we're not, but I think we will be. But I'm excited to see him actually run some real routes, like even just some slants and stuff. I just want to see him do that and get some yards after the catch, because I think he can do that and add a little bit of an element to this offense and keep offenses guessing and keep them on their toes. And I do like the kind of versatility we have in this, backfield, because Robinson obviously is going to be our main runner, but he can receive the football as well. Like we saw that nice one-handed catch, and he had a nice touchdown against the Texans, I believe, where he caught it and then trucked the guy in the end zone and that right side. And he's had some nice, receiving games as well. Not amazing, but I think he's a capable, receiver. And Rodriguez didn't do much in college, but he's a capable receiver as well, and so is Patterson and Williams. So teams aren't necessarily going to know, we're passing or running. Like, when Derrick Henry's in the backfield, that he's, the Titans are running football almost, most of the time. But here, I think it's going to be a little bit more of a guessing game for opposing defenses, and that is good for us. So that is it for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe if you guys are new, and peace.